Hi team, good afternoon. My name is Chris Sherwell. I work on the Defined Contribution team here at Franklin Templeton. And today I'm going to share some simple ideas on how you can pass your CIMA examination. First, let me show you an outline. There's nothing secret or magical about my system. It's really about staying organized and doing the work. I've used this system on a variety of tough tests, including the Series 7, the AIF, the CRPS, the CIMA, and most recently the Series 24, and it's worked every time. So I'm confident that it can work for you. And here are the 5 steps. First, you want to get off to a quick start. Time's going to move quickly. You don't want to waste the first couple months of your study period. Second, no 0 days. To get the material in your mind, you're going to need to do a little bit of work every day. Probably over a 4-month span, I only had 2 days where I didn't study. I tried to do work every day, and that helped me learn the material. 3, you want to use different types of study. It's important to know yourself. We're all different, but just passively reading the material, for many of us, sets us up to fail. So you need to have different types of study. 4, use technology. I'll share a couple shortcuts that really helped me, I think, pass all these tests. And 5, practice, practice, practice. You want to make sure that you take the practice tests. So let's get started. Well, let's talk about step 1, getting off to a fast start with your CIMA study. I remember when I first got my CIMA book. I was looking through the book, and the first thing I noticed was the text was microscopic. I also noticed that it was over 1,000 pages long. The last thing that I didn't like was that the index didn't have a lot of the things that I was studying. It was really hard to find information in the book. It's important to get off to a fast start. You want to get rid of that overwhelmed feeling as soon as possible. It really took me probably a week and a half to formulate a good game plan for attacking the CIMA, but a quick start was critical. Also, life's going to happen. I was about 3 months into my test preparation when I had a family emergency. I had to fly out to Rochester, New York. But because I got off to a fast start and I front-loaded the work, I was still able to keep my test date and pass the first time. So I think getting off to a quick start is essential. Now maybe you're already midstream. Today can be your day 1 of putting together your attack plan. The other thing that helped me a lot was establishing a test date early on in the process. I think that going slow, it might seem like it's helpful to have extra time, but actually I don't think it is helpful. For me, going slow means forgetting stuff, procrastination, putting stuff off. I needed to put the urgency into the process, so I established my test date early. And most of you have probably seen the idea from Stephen Covey about things that are important and things that are urgent. A ringing phone is urgent, an email is urgent. But the CIMA wasn't urgent, but it's really important to my career. It's important for my interactions with advisors. It's important for my professional growth. So establishing that test date and having some accountability gave me the urgency to get the energy to push me through. So we talked about the importance of getting off to a quick start. Now let's look at point number 2, no 0 days. So no 0 days, what does that exactly mean? Well, to me, no 0 days means doing a little bit of work every day and keeping it doable. So some days when I had a lot of energy, I'd be attacking the tests or the quizzes. On other days where maybe I was tired and I worked a full day of work, I'd come home and take a look at some flashcards. But it's really important to take this huge gargantuan task and break it down into bite-sized pieces. It was really important for me to pull the calendar off the wall and figure out how I was going to fit this into my normal life. So usually I would have, maybe 3 or 4 study sessions weeknight, not marathon sessions, maybe 45, 50 minutes. A long session on Saturday. I took a lot of Sundays off. That's how I was able to piece it into my life. So we talked about getting off to a quick start. We talked about doing a little bit of work every single day. Now let's talk about different types of study. And for me, this might have been the most important part of the process.
Deliver the sale of an asset with the sales price agreed on now.
Let's talk about different types of study. For me to pass the CIMA, it was really important to use all the tools. And actually, I did the same thing with the Series 24 as well. Probably every time I started a new chapter, I would always start with the lecture. Now, a lot of people say you should read the chapter first, then listen to the lecture. But in our industry, there's a lot of jargon. And, it'd been a while since I'd had my finance class in college. So for me, starting with the lectures first and then jumping into reading the material was real helpful. Also, the lectures were kind of my go-to when I was tired. Maybe I had an intense day at work or there was a lot going on. When I needed to re-immerse into CIMA, I would start with the lecture. That being said, I think it's important to know yourself and how you learn. So for me, interacting with the material was important as well. So I used an old-fashioned but simple system called flashcards, and I would make flashcards for each chapter. And the process of writing helped get the material in my mind. And I could also gauge how well I was doing by how big my flashcard stack was for each chapter. So it's kind of an old school approach. Then once I had the flashcards, I could use flashcards to review the material. I also took a lot of quizzes, but for me it was a process. It was a little bit of everything. Reading, lectures, passive listening, flashcards, writing. The last thing I'll say is I even had days, this sounds kind of funny, but there was days where I just fooled around with the calculator. Now you might say, well, why would you do that? That's a waste of time. But we're in an age where for the last 10 years, most of my calculations have been done on a spreadsheet. So when I walked into the CIMA room, I needed to make sure that the calculator was my friend and not my enemy. So I spent a lot of days just fooling around with the calculator. And one kind of fun thing I did, I was fooling around with baseball statistics and standard deviation. So what are the odds of a 200 hitter hitting 300? I kind of gamified it a little bit, but that's what I needed to do to pass. Let's take a look at step number 4, using technology. I've got some simple ideas that really helped me that I think can help you as well.
Oversighting the financial system.
Let's talk a little bit about technology. Probably most of you spend a lot of time in the car. Even in my hybrid role, I spend a lot of time in the car too. And I needed to find a way to make use of some of that dead time driving around. Also, my parents live an hour away. My son lives a couple hours away. So when I'm on the road just killing time, why not listen to the CIMA lectures and get that material in my mind? So one of the things I did is I used our Microsoft OneDrive. I downloaded all the lectures from the Yale website onto the OneDrive. Then I could listen to them on the Bluetooth in my car. And very useful.
The goals may include stabilizing.
I found it particularly helpful with the behavioral finance, the economic section, and even some of the math. There's a couple areas where you can use the formulas more than one way. And I noticed the second or third time I listened to a lecture, I would hear the professor say, yeah, you use this formula here. This is how you use it that way. I would catch things that I just didn't catch the first time. So I admit I had to give up some music listening and some news listening, but it was really important for me to get that CIMA information in my head. Let's talk a little bit about the Microsoft OneDrive. I think it's a powerful tool that sometimes might be underutilized. One thing that was really important for me in studying for the CIMA and also in studying for the Series 24 was making it easy for myself to study. I'm not always in front of the computer. I'm not always at the office. I might be at a hotel. I could be on an airplane. For me, it was really important to get that material easily accessible. So by having it on the OneDrive, I was able to, maybe I'm on an airplane on the way to some territory work. I could pull up the slides while on the plane and read the slides. Also, I had the lectures, so using the OneDrive, I was able to access everything from any device. So most of the time I used my iPad, but I could also use my company laptop or my company iPhone. So I tried to make it easy to be successful. If I'm in the doctor's office, I'm in the waiting room for a half hour, I can pull up some of the slides. The other thing I did too is I put them all in order. So every time I downloaded slides,
I put them in order as they were presented. That way, I had a game of attack. Being organized was really, really important. And I won't show you here, but I even had a checklist for how many times I reviewed each chapter. That way I made sure that I was focusing on all of the material. Because, my goal wasn't to get an A, my goal was to pass the test. And I needed to make sure I'd been through everything at least a couple of times.
Here's one side point. Maybe you can't get the OneDrive to work, or maybe they changed the Yale website to where it's harder to download the material. You can also download the lectures or record the lectures using your voice memos feature on your phone. I did that actually with the Series 24. Doesn't really use a lot of memory. It was a little tedious. I had to take my phone, put it up against a computer speaker and hit record. But it was well worth it, because both tests were a process of 4 or 5 months. Once I had the lectures on my phone, I could listen to them at any time I wanted to, or even sometimes taking walks outside. So wanted to just share that little side point with you as well. All right, well, we're in the home stretch. Hopefully you're still with me. So we're on the final step here. So we've gone through the importance of a quick start, not wasting time, doing some work as often as you can, no 0 days if possible. Doing different types of study so that you have a chance to really learn the material, because it's too much to just put to your short-term memory. You have to learn a lot of it. Using the technology to be your friend. Let's talk about step 5, which for me actually was critical, and that's the step taking the practice exams. Well, I'm working from home today, and right now it's a little bit after 12 o'clock. If I were to start a Yale exam right now, that would be a 5-hour task. So I think part of the process of taking the practice exams is to get yourself ready to sit for an examination for 5 hours. 5 hours is a long time. It's physically and mentally demanding, so you need to make sure that you do the practice tests at least a couple times. I think one of the biggest mistakes that is easy to make is taking one practice test and then thinking you're ready to take the CIMA exam. Because for me, I found the actual exam to be a little bit harder, and they also wrote out the questions a little bit differently. So I actually took the practice test 5 different times. The first time I think I got like a 59 and a horrible score. I was a long ways away from passing. The second time I got a 68. The third time I got into the 70s. The fourth time I got into the 90s, believe it or not. Then I had that family emergency. I didn't touch my books for like a week and a half. So the 5th time I got an 82. But by that time I had learned enough of it to walk into the examination center and pass. And, it was really a simple process. Well, it wasn't simple, but it was a straightforward process. I would go through each test. I would look at the answers to the problems that I got wrong. Then I would actually dig into the math and try to figure out, what I did wrong. And the other thing that I did when I was reviewing the quizzes and the sample tests is I utilized the message board on the Yale website as well. And sometimes I felt like, gosh, I'm the only one asking questions. Maybe I'm not very smart, or these other people all know more than me. But, I didn't care how I looked. I needed to get the answers so that I could pass this test. And there was a couple of times where I said, I can't get this math to work. What am I overlooking? And the Yale professors were actually really good about getting back to me and giving me the answers. And that way, once I actually learned what I was doing, it all got a lot easier. And remember, you don't have to ace all the math. You just need to get enough of it right so that you don't blow up your score. So that's some thoughts on the Yale test. In my mind, taking it once isn't enough. It also helps to get the buy-in of your spouse as well. My wife knew that when I was taking a Yale exam, she might hear some salty language in the other room, but that me passing the CIMA would be good for both of us. So she was a partner in the process. So there you have it. Don't waste time. Get off to a quick start. Try to do a little bit of work every day. Use different techniques for studying. Use the technology. Make sure you take enough practice tests. I didn't cram the night before. I'm going to show you right now what I did the night before. I needed to relax. I don't believe in cramming. I don't think it works. I think it's better to do a little bit of work over a long period of time and have a plan of attack. So the night before my test, I hung out with my wife, I had a good meal, we watched a movie, then I played a little guitar and blew off some steam. Now, I don't know how you blow off steam, but it's really important to go into the test center calm, relaxed, and ready to take care of business. Well, good luck on your exam, and thank you for your time.